Hello and welcome. So today we start the new series of lectures about the sacrifices. However, this time, instead of following the Gambit Guide principles when we sacrifice for development and sacrifice for attack, sacrifice for initiative, we will take more deeply the real sacrifices. This is positional sacrifices. So what is the main difference from the classical tactical sacrifices, which usually leads to the situation when we winning quite fast, quite rapidly the material back, or even achieving the material advantages, or developing a direct attack against our opponent's king. So what's the difference? Let's start just understanding how we consider the sacrifices. For instance, the position after e4, e5, knight f3 and f6, if you know that the main recommendation here for white is to sacrifice immediately knight and to play knight takes e5. So can we say that this is positional sacrifice? Of course not. Why? Because after black accepting the sacrifice, for instance playing f takes e5, white immediately plays queen h5 check, and black is in big trouble. In case of g6, white plays queen takes e5 and black's rook on h8 is gone, and king e7 move leads after queen takes e5, king g6, bishop c4 to the maiden attack. For instance, king g6 check, d4 check. So I studied this position when I was just 7 years old, and black has no any defense against a maiden attack. So usually black plays bishop e7, h take g5, double check, and queen f7. So what exactly happened here, and why so fast white realized his advantage? Because by the sacrifice knight takes e5, so this is a tactical sacrifice. We immediately find the tactical targets of the position. So black's king completely unprotected, alone here after queen h5 check. So no pieces which could protect the king direct from the white's direct attack. So also, for instance, let's look at the old game played by Edward Lasker against Thomas in 1912. d4, f5, knight c3, knight f6, bishop g5, e6, e4, d takes e4, f takes e4, knight takes e4, bishop e7, bishop f6, bishop f6, knight f3, short castling, bishop d3, b6, knight e5, bishop b7, and here white played queen h5 looking for the checkmating attack after knight takes f6 and then queen takes h7. So let's look that all white pieces looking towards the king side. Black played queen e7, and here Edward Lasker came with a fantastic and the famous combination. So he sacrificed a full queen, queen takes h7 check, but this sacrifice is also pure tactical sacrifice, because after black is accepting it, knight takes f6, king doesn't have opportunity to go back, to go to h8 after knight g6. This is a checkmate. So black king should go to h6, knight g4, and famous combination leads to the position when black's king, you see, by force reaching very bad position on the last rank. So here white could play also long castle and also king d2, another nicely position for the checkmate. So what we can say about queen takes h7 sacrifice? Pure tactical sacrifice. So here is nothing real, because white immediately found the way how to organize the direct attack against the black king. Very nice combination. However, for the serious chess player, it's not so difficult here to to calculate, because more or less black moves are forced. So black king should go forward under the fire of all white pieces, and finally the king is finding his death in the white's camp. So just look at different kind of opportunity when we go for tactical sacrifices. So I could show you one more. So the next position, black is to move, and we looking at the game Boголюбов against Spielman. Here black find quite nice, however still tactical combination. The target of this combination just or checkmate white's king, or to reach the material advantage. Rook takes f2. Now if white recaptures with the rook f2, that queen a1 check, and with the next move the checkmate, or after bishop d1, queen takes d1, rook e1, queen takes e1. Because of the pin, white's king is just completely done. If white plays rook takes f2, so we again play rook takes f2, and still rook takes f2 cannot be played. Same motive, queen a1 check, and next move would be mate. And after queen takes f2, black plays queen to e5. So now the queen is gone, and after g3, Spielman realized his material advantage without any trouble. h5, rook d1, bishop takes f2, king takes f2, queen f6 check, king e3, queen f3 check, king d4, e3, rook d3, queen f2, rook takes e3, queen takes h2. So black has two extra pawns, and queen versus rook and a bishop. So definitely there is no option here for white to create any kind of fortress. So black realized his advantage very fast. So the main difference when we are talking about the positional sacrifice or real sacrifice, that usually after we sacrifice pawn or exchange or piece, there is no direct way to achieve the material advantages or clear mating attack or some direct threats. So usually we sacrifice positionally just for getting some other factors. For instance, better development. We can get also better position of our pieces. We can improve some pressure over the weak square, or we can sacrifice a pawn for getting the open file for our rook, or a diagonal for our bishops. So these kind of sacrifices very difficult to explain as a tactical sacrifice, because we are taking a risk, and when we take any risk, so it means that we are going to play number of moves without the material only later on. So thanks to merits of our position, so we can get back as dividends or material back, or develop such a big pressure that our opponent's pieces would get into the bad position, and we really could develop some serious attack, serious maybe serious pressure over the position of the king, or even on the queen side, or even to achieve the control over the center, building the strong pawn center. Let's say the classical Evans gambit, also this kind of positional sacrifices. Let's say after bishop c4, bishop c5, white plays b4 in order, after bishop takes b4, c3 and d4 to achieve strong position in the center. One more, I would say, positional sacrifice: e4, e5, f4, d5, Falkbeer counter gambit. And also here, after e takes d5, black plays e4 just with the idea to destroy white's development. So this is a real positional sacrifice. So black doesn't get immediately some material dividends or some clear way of targeting white's position. So black is just sacrificing a pawn for sacrifice. Let's say If you remember the classical game on Paul Morphy, then here after d3, knight f6, knight c3, which he played in 8057 against Schulten, bishop b4 and bishop d2, black even sacrificed one more pawn for the same idea: destroy white's development and to achieve much better position of the pieces. After bishop takes e3, short castling, and later on rook e8, so white played bishop d2, bishop takes c3, b takes c3, check on e8, bishop e2, and now bishop g4, and suddenly what we see, that white cannot finish the develop normally. So after c4, again here we see the positional sacrifice. Morphy played c6 in order to develop his knight towards the center very fast. So these ideas were developed rapidly, I would say, so that all lines where we destroy the balance and sense to the sacrifice become very popular. And even today, for achieving the advantage in the center, you have to surprise the opponent. How usually we surprise the opponent? With the positional sacrifice. It's just quite difficult to surprise with the tactical sacrifice. It's not so tough for opponent to understand, to realize the danger. So when we are talking about the positional sacrifice, that's much more complicated for opponent to understand what danger is coming next. So in the Morpheus game, after d takes c6, move which all commentators, including Garry Kasparov, criticize, say that probably decisive mistake, because after knight takes c6, despite the fact that black is having 2 pawns down, his positional activity of all his forces has a decisive character. After king f1, rook takes e2, knight takes e2, and knight d4, black achieve not just positional advantage but also the material, because the knight on e2 is gone. So what we can say, that when you see the opportunity to sacrifice pawn for the development, like a gambit guide style, so I would recommend you to study the most important gambits. Here we saw the gambit against the Falksberg counter gambit, but of course the classical gambits like e4, c5, d4, more gambit, that again white is developing here the positional compensation for a pawn, thanks to the better development of all his forces. And black is having lot of troubles here to solve, a lot of problems to solve before really achieving the good position. So that's why, for instance, in many sources the main recommendation here for black, or just to give away this pawn immediately after d3, or to counterattack white center after knight f6, and not to accept the sacrifice in more gambit. In the same style, I would like to tell you, we can find many different games, different examples. One more I would like to show you, not connected to the gambit guide. It's not a gambit openings, even more to say, it's just quite pure positional opening. It's Sicilian defense, e4, c5. We followed the game Shianovsky against Guffet, played in 1968. Knight f3, knight c6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4. I like to show it from the black side, and g6, accelerated dragons. So when black is allowing white to play c2, c4 immediately. So what's the main point? Black would like to develop bishop g7, knight f6, and smash white center at once after d7, d5. However, the drawback of this move g6, that white could get the center and to play c4, knight f6, knight c3, knight takes d4. Because white got slightly more space, it's a good idea for black to exchange the pieces. That's exactly a principle Edward Guffert is following. Queen takes d4, d6. So very popular position. So today mostly white plays bishop e3 or bishop e2 or even f3. However, white decided immediately to act and to push the pawn further. c4, c5, bishop g7. So black is not reacting. D takes c5, queen takes c5 would give white slightly better game. Bishop g7, bishop b5 check, bishop d7, c takes d6, and look at that. Black is just simply continue his development. So this is a real sacrifice. Black is not getting anything special for this pawn. He's just playing for better development. So this is one of the interesting opportunity for us. So we sacrifice the pawn for a rapid development of all our pieces. So black basically didn't care about the pawns on e7 as well. For instance, after d takes e7, queen takes e7, black is intending already to capture on b5 and or to capture on e4 at right moment. So look at the black's bishop on g7 looking towards the white's queen. So white decided to continue aggressively. e4, e5, bishop takes b5, knight takes b5, and black instantly start attacking the pawn on e5, knight d7, f4. So white is trying to keep his material advantage. White is having extra pawn, but look at the king. Look at the bishop and the rooks. They are not playing it at all when black has all his pieces in the game. Queen a5 check, very important move, needs to send away the knight on c3. Now e takes d6, queen takes d6, and here from now this sacrifice already more tactical, because after knight takes e5, look at that, white's king is under the fire of all the black pieces. So black sacrificing pawn, but probably there is no way for white to defend his position anymore. Bishop takes e5, so black is intending bishop takes c3. Unfortunately, white doesn't have time to play queen a3 and trying to exchange the queens, because queen takes a3, b takes a3, and then bishop takes c3 and bishop takes a1. Black is getting material advantage. So queen d3 gives black opportunity to bring all the forces into the game. Rook d8. So gaining one more tempo. Now if queen c2, white king has no way to escape from the problem. Queen takes rook e8, queen f1, check on b5, king f2, again check, and rook d3, next check, game is over. If white plays here b takes c3, black is continue again, rook take f to e8. Not so difficult here to see all these tactical opportunities for black, because again what I said, when we sacrifice tactically, that more or less moves of our opponent are forced. So white has to move the king to f1, check, important. Now if c4, then queen f6 check, and unfortunately rook is gone. King should go forward to f2, check, king g3. So possible to play here, I don't know, h5, h4, possible to play rook d5, and almost impossible for white here to avoid this threat. Queen d6 check, bishop f4, rook e3 check. Or if king goes to h3, then rook h5, and this is a checkmate. Let's say h4 move would be made by check, king h3, check, and checkmate after g3, queen take g3. So that's why after white choose to move the queen to f3, and nice move, very nice next move, bishop d4. Sorry king, but you never would castle again. So the next threat, rook f to e8, leaves white without any chance to survive. g3, check, king f1. So exchange the last defender of the position. Bishop takes c3. This is a typical move and very important move to understand. So when we have the huge development advantage, it's quite good idea to exchange already developed pieces of our opponent. In that case, we are increasing our development advantage. So how? By removing your opponent's last defenders. So here bishop takes c3 leaves white with passive pieces. All pieces are passive. So if queen takes c3, then rook d1 check, and white is going to lose the rook on h1. After b takes c3, again check, king f2, rook d3, queen f6, and nice finish. Check, check, and queen is gone. So very nice play by Edward Gutfeld. So what we saw in this game, very interesting. So black in the opening, instead of trying to defend his pawn, decided to sacrifice the pawn for better development. As a result, when white won the pawn, so it allows black to rapidly bring all his pieces into the game, and even a forthcoming sacrifice was not a big surprise, because all the factors allowed black to sacrifice and to achieve the huge advantage. We had open files against the white uncastled king, and of course all our pieces came into the attack very fast. However, all this started with the sacrifice, positional sacrifice after bishop g7. So knight takes e5, of course we could call also positional sacrifice because there is no direct chessmate. But of course we can say that this is tactical sacrifice because all factors were on the black side. So black had only carefully calculate the best variations of how to finish off white's position. Let's say one more example from the game between Nimzovich and Alapin. So this is a position which happened in the game. White has serious development advantage, and we have to find the way how to continue to keep the initiative, and how we get it with a real positional sacrifice. So white, instead of waiting like playing queen d2 or c3, started with bishop e2. So white is sacrificing a pawn to increase his development advantage and to improve placement of the pieces. So black probably had to continue here on knight d7 or knight c6. Instead he decided to capture on g2. Queen takes g2. Bishop f3, queen g6, queen d2. So white is having all his pieces ready for the further actions, and white is also preparing for long castling. For black is very difficult here to continue developing. However, knight d7 was almost necessary. Instead, black opted for another positional mistake. He played e5. So instead of developing, trying to complete the development, black is pushing pawns. So what is the most natural continuation in such a situation? Of course, we shouldn't even consider move like knight b3 or knight a2, which such a great development advantage. I would like to teach you that there's no need to be scared, to be worried. You have to play brave chess, long castling. So white is ignoring the attack on the knight on d4 for just completing the development. E takes d4 now more or less is necessary to take the free knight. However, maybe it was better to play bishop e7. Still, white's initiative is huge. After rook g1 and queen f6, white could play bishop g5, queen d6, bishop takes e7, queen takes e7, and here nice tactical shot probably finish the game. Bishop takes b7. Now if bishop takes b7, then knight f5, and then knight takes g7. if queen takes b7, still knight f5, intending knight d6, knight takes g7, and of course queen d8. So black has no way to defend against the forthcoming attack. For instance, queen d7, knight takes g7, king d8, and queen a5. Game is over. Why all this happened? Because of the white's huge development advantage. However, black decided bishop e7 was the last chance. However, black decided to go for all e takes d4, bishop takes d4, knight c6, and the next sacrifice is absolutely tactical sacrifice. White is having such a great advantage that just not surprised that we have just to find the way how to finish it. Bishop f6, threatening queen d8, knight d8, rook d8, checkmate. Queen takes f6, more or less only move. Bishop takes c6, check. Now if queen takes c6 and queen d8, checkmate. B takes c6 necessary. Rook h to e1, check. Game is over. If bishop e7, then queen d8, checkmate. If bishop e6, then this is a nice checkmate. So Nimzovich against Alapin, played in St. Petersburg 1914. Another great example of the pawn sacrifice for positional factors. Better development, fast, rapidly we bring all the pieces in the game ready for castling. And of course is still we are like continuing the ideas of the gambit guide from the totally different structure, different opening lines. So it's not gambit guide, but this is same gambit guide ideas. So we sacrifice material for getting better development, and this still we can call this is a real sacrifice, because white doesn't have any clear winning lines after that. However, his better placement of the pieces and initiative fully compensate the small material disadvantage. So it was the first lecture about the positional sacrifice, and if you have any question, just leave a message on ICC, as I recommend you for better understanding of the style of sacrifice for development. I would like to ask you to study more in deep gambit guide lectures. So next lesson we will take more a close look at the positional sacrifice with different them. So not only sacrifice for development, but also sacrifice for blockading, sacrifice for stopping our opponent from the easy development, so blocking the pieces, and slowly so we will go to the slightly more complicated sacrifices of the piece exchange, rooks, and even queens, positional sacrifice of the queens. So we have more lectures about the positional sacrifice, and see you next time.